Here at Cork and Fizz, I'm all about helping you discover new wines. Yes, I know it's easy to just continue to buy your favorite bottle, but I have to tell you, you're missing out. Did you know there are over 10,000 different grape varieties and over 65,000 wine producers worldwide? Trust me, there are so many more delicious wines out there for you to try, and your next favorite bottle is just waiting for you to find it. In an effort to encourage you to try something new, I'm bringing back my free summer wine challenge. That's right, it's free. Head to the link in my show notes, corkandfizz.com/summer wine challenge to sign up. This challenge will last 6 weeks, and during that time, all I ask is that you try 6 new wines and fill out a simple tasting form on my website for each one. I'll also be sending you exclusive weekly emails with recommendations for regions and wines to explore. Plus, you'll have access to not one, but 2 free live virtual tastings where you get to learn about and taste wine with me and fellow challenge goers. If you successfully taste and record 6 new wines in the 6 weeks, you'll receive a class pass, which gives you access to a virtual tasting party of your choosing with my tasting club, the Cork Crew. Plus, everyone who completes the challenge will be entered to win a free 1-year membership to the Cork Crew, with one lucky winner being chosen at the end of July. We start June 19th, but you can sign up anytime between now and before the challenge ends on July 30th. Head to the link in my show notes to join me. Oh, and did I mention it's free? Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. Now, if you didn't know this about me already, I'm sure it's no surprise that one of my dreams is to own a wine bar or a wine shop, or maybe a combination of the two. That said, I'm very excited to talk to our wine expert today. It is Desirae Ballard. She is the owner and sole proprietor of the Grape Choice wine store and wine bar in downtown Kirkland. If you're not from the Seattle area, just think of it as like the east side of Seattle. I'm sure all the Seattleites hate me saying that, but basically, like, imagine Seattle, but then you cross over Lake Washington, and that is where Kirkland is, and that's where this wine store is. So Desirae, she was a stay-at-home mom, and it was her greatest joy. She did want to pursue her passion with wine, and so she began a part-time position at the Grape Choice back when her son was only 6 months old. That was in 2008. Later in 2018, she began a position as the manager. And finally, in April of 2023, she purchased the wine shop from the previous owner. So she's basically living my dream life at the moment. So I aspire to be Desirae. She'd actually bought it from the previous owners who'd owned it for over 40 years. Now, since then, she has expanded seating. She's expanded the food menu to include incredible charcuterie boards that complement the wine selection. You'll learn in this podcast why that is so important for this wine shop and this wine bar. Today, she's going to talk to me about all the different hats that she wears as the owner and how being a wine shop owner is really fun, but maybe not as glamorous as it sounds. Don't worry, after the interview, I'm still very excited about potentially owning a wine shop. We also talk about how she made the Grape Choice more approachable to wine beginners and those in the younger generations who at the moment are being said that they don't drink as much wine, though I don't know. I've been seeing things that prove otherwise. Now, you'll notice this episode is a little shorter for my typical interview episodes if you've tuned into quite a few. I heard you. The episodes are a little long. So, what I did is I split this interview into two. That way, this is like that perfect size. Everybody loves the 20 to 40-minute podcast episode. You can listen to it on your way to work, on your morning walk, whatever has you. But I broke it down into two parts. So, in this episode, you will hear part one, where you learn all about Desirae, her background, and how she turned the Grape Choice into the amazing wine shop and wine bar that it is today. And then you'll have to tune in next week to hear her top tips for shopping at a small wine shop as someone on the inside. Get a little inside scoop. We'll talk about a few other things in that episode as well. But again, this week it is all part one of my interview with Desirae Ballard. And next week you'll get to hear part two. But without further ado, let's get into it. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Glad we were able to schedule this and looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Thanks for having
Cool.
me.
Yeah, of course. Well, I figured we'll just jump right in. But I feel like I said, like, let's start with something easy, but this question could be easy or hard, depending on like what it was for you. But I always like to know, why wine? How did you get into the world of wine? Was it always a passion, or did you fall into it later in life?
It was just about as drinking age started. So I got into it pretty quickly once I was allowed. It's an interesting story in a way. I had a cousin and her mom, dad, aunt, and uncle. My cousin was a pastry chef in a really high-end restaurant in North Carolina, and her parents were pretty well off. So they decided to open her own restaurant for her in Durham, North Carolina. So they asked me to come out and be the front of house manager. And I probably was just barely 21 years old and sounded like a fun thing to try and do. So I drove across country to help them open a fine dining restaurant in Durham. And in the meantime, I started working at the restaurant that she was the pastry chef at, which is a very high-end restaurant called the Farrington House. It's really well known. It's kind of like our version of like Salish Lodge or something like that. And so they just had a really big wine program. My aunt and uncle were wine connoisseurs. So every night we would make dinner and we would open a new bottle of wine. And they would just teach me every single night like a new wine. And they had a pretty nice wine cellar. So I got to start my career drinking some of the best stuff. And they had a really big passion for Northwest wine because of their background. So he did a lot of work, and this is over 20 years ago, to bring in wines from Washington, Oregon, California to the East Coast, which a lot of people weren't doing. So that's how I basically got started in it. And
Oh
it
my
was a fun way to start.
goodness.
Yeah,
What are like that sounds like such I'm just like dreaming about that. I'm like, how nice. Just like showing up and like having like the family that just like has the cellar and you just taste and that's the first time I've heard a story like that where it's like, well, they opened a restaurant and they're like, hey, you want to do this? And I'm sure it was
yeah,
like not easy to do that, but how cool to have that experience kind of be provided or at least introduced to you and you taking the risk and being like, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
exactly. I always say I did it backwards. I started with, the $100 bottles and worked my way down to Shiraz and Yellowtail.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I started at 21. There's a picture of me holding like a bottle of Barefoot Moscato
Yes, yes.
out there. And I'm like, that's where I started. Oh, funny. Just a quick reminder, if you are not on my mailing list yet, what are you waiting for? I would love for you to join. When you do, you'll get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a little section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, and so much more. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about how you became the owner of the Grape Choice. So that was fairly recently, 2023. Before that, you were a manager, and before that, you had just worked there. What made you decide to purchase the wine shop? Like, how did you make that decision?
It's been a long journey here. I started here when my son was 6 months old. Now he's my bar back. So it's been a long journey, but he was born. I just became a stay-at-home mom, and I'm just a person that's motivated to work. Must have purpose. I needed interaction with adults. So I just opened a Craigslist ad, and the second one that came up was this wine store needing a part-time bartender. And I just thought, oh my God, how perfect for me. Like something I've gotten out of the habit of, like, I used to love great wine and I love to cook. And so I quickly answered the Craigslist ad like it was a Craigslist ad instead of a job ad. And I literally said, I'll take it instead of like, may I apply? Here's my resume. So I sent it. Then I sent another one that said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And they didn't call me. And
Oh no. You knew you were perfect for it. You're like, you guys don't
I
understand.
did.
This is
Yeah.
like you're welcome. I will come
Yeah.
do that.
I was like, yeah, I'll take it. It's on Craigslist instead. But they eventually called me and then they gave me the job. And the thing about this place is that it's not a wine store, it is a community gathering place. And the thing that really drew me in was how I connected with the people that come in here all the time. And it just felt like home. And so I knew quickly that this was what I wanted. They were older at the time, but they weren't ready to sell. And I kind of just made it known that please, when you do think about it, I'd like to be considered. And I was married at the time.
Can I ask how early did you know that you
I
would want to
mean, probably
purchase?
within a year, I was really in love with it. Really, it was life changing. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we're thinking 5 years from now. And they put in a Christmas letter, like heir apparent. And I was so excited. And the 5 years turned into 10 years. And then I got divorced and I needed a full-time job. And I said, if we're talking about me buying this place, I do need to manage it first to make sure that it makes financial sense for me, since now I'm a single mom and I need to make ends meet. And I can't imagine anybody else owning it, but I got to do the work first and make sure I'm not just some dreamer, you know. So they hired me in 2018, and then everything was going okay, and I was liking it, and it was nice. And then the pandemic happened, and it was fight or flight. And so I fought really hard. I did a lot of stuff to make this, a lot of the things I had been holding back for when I owned it, so that I could, implement some things that would make more money. And I just gave all those things to the place, and we doubled our revenue during the course of COVID. And so at the end of it all, they just kind of said, it's not our place anymore, it's yours. And the time is right. So we started
Wow.
that process in 2022, and it just took a while to kind of come to fruition. But
Sure. Wow, I have goosebumps. It's so fun to hear you talk about you literally you did the work first. Like you proved it. You're like, I'm going to manage it. I'm going to manage it during a very difficult time and I'm going to do all these things. And then I'm so glad that they saw that and we're like, yes, this is clearly yours now. And they're probably
yeah,
so happy to be able to gift it because they'd owned it for a while, right? It was like
40
40 years.
years. Yeah, I bought it 2 months before their 40th anniversary.
Wow.
And they're some of my best customers now. They joined the wine club. They come in and buy a case of wine every once in a while. They're my biggest fans. So it's really a great special relationship.
Oh, so wonderful. Well, talking of owning a wine shop and a wine bar, I feel like at first look, when I think about it, I'm like, that's kind of something that I dream of in the future. And people ask me like, oh, are you going to make your own wine or will you do this? And I'm like, if there was something, I think it would be owning a wine shop or a wine bar. I think that would be in the future, maybe. And at first thought, it's like, that sounds wonderful, right? It's very glamorous. You just get to drink wine all day and
That
hang
is
out with
part of it.
people drinking wine, but I'm sure you're just wait. I'm sure there are challenges. So I'm curious, can you kind of share? I had the idea of maybe sharing what a typical day is like, though I'm sure they're all a little different, but maybe just what some of your typical days look like as a wine shop owner.
It's interesting. Every day kind of does have its own feel to it for sure. But let's see. Basically, I get in as early as I can so that I can do things before people start bothering me, which is at about 11 a.m. Bothering me could be people delivering me wine, trying to sell me wine, trying to buy wine for me, trying to drink a glass of wine, and bother me in the best way. Obviously, I don't work in customer service oriented business because I don't like people. I love people. So, but yes, it could be generally let's say a Wednesday is kind of the day that's one that people find more interesting, which is we have a wine tasting at the evening, but it is also my busiest day for everybody to come in that day. So I'll get wine reps and customers. So I'm kind of juggling somebody coming in, they've got 5 wines they want me to taste through. Then they walk around the store and see what they can try to sell me based off of my order history. we'll sit down, we chat. They're all my friends. So we always have a good time here. And we just drink through some wine. And sometimes it'll get backed up and I literally have everybody set up at a different table and I call it speed tasting instead of speed dating. Just to sit down, I'll get to you as soon as I can. And it's kind of, some people do cattle calls, some people make appointments. I find it to be fun to like never know what's going to happen that day. But
And those are, just to clarify, that those are distributors, right?
those are
Or sometimes
distributors, yes,
winemakers too.
or winemakers
Okay.
or distributors with a winemaker or importers. There's all kinds of people come and call on me, or brand reps. So that happens between about 12 and 3. And then about 3 o'clock, the bar starts to get busy and people start coming in. And at that point, I'm also getting ready to do a tasting. And the tasting is either a winemaker showcasing their wines or a distributor doing like an educational regional tasting. This last one was like a Rhone, France tasting, Southern Rhone, which people love both versions. And then I get to sit down at 5:30 and do the wine tasting and interact with customers. And it's like, go home, make dinner. And that's like the most busy, fun days for me. But I do a lot of the bar work because I love the customer interaction and stuff.
Yeah, no, that does sound fun. I'm curious, what are some responsibilities? So we know we already talked about kind of having, people bring you wine and tasting it and trying to figure out what should be in the shop and then running the wine tasting. What are some like responsibilities that, like, as the owner of a wine shop, that people might be surprised to hear that you do throughout the week as your role? This podcast is sponsored by VoChill. When you're enjoying a glass of wine, temperature matters. And you don't need to be a wine expert to know this. You know this the minute you realize you forgot to put the bottle of wine in the fridge, and now you're stuck with lukewarm Sauvignon Blanc that is the opposite of refreshing. You know adding ice cubes will just water the wine down, but it seems like it's your only option. Not anymore. I want to introduce you to one of my favorite wine gadgets, VoChill. This gadget is as simple as it is elegant. It will keep wine perfectly chilled in your own wine glass. No more clunky metal or plastic tumblers or ice in your wine. While this gadget is an absolute must during the summer months, I don't enjoy wine without it from June to September. It's also incredibly useful for those days when you're craving a glass of white or rosé, but you don't want to wait for the bottle to chill in the fridge. VoChill offers a stemmed and stemless chiller in multiple colors, so you're bound to find one that's perfect for you. They also make the perfect gift. I should know, I got one for my mom at Christmas a couple years ago, and she loves it. Head to vochill.com, that's VOCHILL.com, to get your perfect wine chiller, and don't forget to use code CORKANDFIZZ for 15% off your order. This podcast is sponsored by the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club. Interested in trying new wines, but not sure where to start? Or maybe you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you love the idea of tasting wine live with me. If that's you, come join my Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club, and you'll get to sip wine with me twice a month while I help you find new favorite wines. The Cork Crew is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. And the best part about this club, purchasing the wine is completely optional. Plus, all events are recorded, and you have access to the full library of recordings as a Cork Crew member, so you can always catch up if you can't make it live. Oh, and did I mention it's virtual, which means you get to do all of this from the comfort of your sofa in your PJs. No need to worry about driving in crappy traffic, finding a designated driver, or spending an arm and a leg on a taxi. Want to give it a try without the commitment? You're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Tasting Club. With this pass, you'll be able to join a Cork Crew event of your choosing. No strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for anything. You'll be my guest. Simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get your class pass and be one step closer to becoming a member of the best wine tasting club around, the Cork Crew. I can't wait to see you there. Now let's get back to the show.
I think it's just that people don't fully, it looks like so much fun that they forget that there's a whole admin side to it, that I've got to go to the bank and get change for the till to like the bathroom's clogged up and I have to deal with that. Or, I've got to go to the Trader Joe's 17 times a week to get fresh produce for our charcuterie boards. And none of it is not fun to me. I think there's probably just they don't realize how much it takes to keep it running because there's events every day. We've got tastings, we've got wine club, we've got music, we've got all the food, and I've got to create the menu and I've got to change the menu when I change, I've got to update the menu boards and the papers. And so it's a one man show. I've got a lot of employees, but really all of the kind of admin stuff because there isn't a lot of money in wine, and everybody will tell you that you can't outsource as much as other places would, like a big box store or a bigger restaurant or one of the larger wineries that has, the ability to kind of have all this help. You're a one-man band when you do this, and you work really, really hard, but we also learn how to play really hard to make up for it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I want to dig a little deeper into how you select the wines that end up at Grape Choice. So for me, that is something that's really fascinating because I feel like it's one of those where it's like, yeah, because you can't just taste for like what you like, I'm sure, right? And we kind of talked about already that like, people can imagine that for the most part, I'm guessing people come to you, the distributors, the winemakers, the importers, as you mentioned, and you're tasting through the wines and deciding which ones end up in the store. And so I'm curious, how do you decide which wines to sell to folks? And do you ever reach out directly to like distributors? Like, do you ever get wines that aren't like brought to you? I know that's kind of a double question, but yeah, whatever you can tell us about that.
I have like a mini system I've created when somebody tries to sell me stuff because let me tell you, there are a lot of Italian wines in the world. And so you have to be discerning. But it is kind of regional. It depends a little bit. People are label centered. You still have to, have a good package. So unless it's from certain parts of Italy or certain parts of France, people just are forgiving of that. So that it's interesting. Domestically, it's brand name and label focused. And internationally, it's really a lot more varietal focused. So I have learned that at the end of the day, I want a wine that tastes good, has a good package, priced correctly for its category, and also hopefully tells a story. So I want to always support as many small wineries as I can. I say that we're a small business supporting other small businesses, like thousands of small businesses. If you really break it down to the distributors that we work with, to the wineries, to the farmers that are farming, we're at the top of the pyramid. We get the most fun because we get to be the one where people are enjoying purchasing the wine, so I really do look at stories of the wineries themselves pretty carefully, and the people, if I get to meet them and I can have the story to say, this winemaker is a really fantastic person, they did this for me, or, they are sustainable or whatever it is. If there's something that sets you apart, especially in Washington, because there are so many wineries and so many different varietals from Washington. And as much as I want to support smaller boutique wineries, I find that when they are just on the shelf and they're not have the name recognition, they don't sell as well. So that's where the Wednesday tastings come in, where I can really help them get their name out there in that capacity.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've never thought about it that way, but I actually kind of how I buy wine too, I'm realizing. Like when it's domestic, if I want to know, like I look at the winery a little bit more. Obviously, I care about the varietal or whatnot and where it's from, but I think I'm more drawn to because I know the names of the wineries, and a lot of times I've met the winemakers or the person behind it, and I'm gonna look for that versus like when I'm buying like Burgundy from France or something, a Chianti or Valpolicella from, Italy. I'm looking for the region and the grape. I actually most of the time couldn't tell you. Like even my favorite Burgundy wine, I'm like, I kind of know what the label looks like, but I don't think I could tell you who the
Yeah.
producer
I always think
is.
domain tell us something, but
Yeah, exactly. I never thought about how much that is. That's so true. Of like, and I don't know if other folks are like this, but it sounds like, at least with what your experience there is, that yeah, people buy, and domestically you need to kind of have label recognition, and then, but the international is more like, okay, what's the region and the grape?
yes, exactly.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And then I also wanted to call out, since we're kind of talking about how a lot of the times when you choose the wine, it's because it tastes good. Would you say that, like, what percentage of the wines in your shop would you say that either you or someone that you work with have tasted?
I've tasted probably 90% of what's in here, and I would think we have about 1,500 different kinds of wine.
Yeah.
And the people that I work, it's a little bit more difficult because they are bartenders. So, I change the wine list pretty often so that I can help them learn as well as our customers learn, like different regions. But that's what I encourage the employees to come to the Wednesday tastings when we do the educational ones. And I wish that part I could do a little bit better at, just because it's by the time they get here, we're slamming with people drinking by the glass. So, and everybody that works here, has worked here for a really long time. And I just encourage them to take home something that makes them uncomfortable and, just keep drinking and try something new. And they've all really found, it's how I did it too. When I started working here, I just went through the glass pours. I trusted the manager at the time. I listened to him when he talked about wine to customers, and it's a slow burn, and there's no way to ever know it all. And that's what I think I love about the most. You're
Oh,
always learning,
yeah.
always changing.
Isn't that true? I'm like, if anybody if tells you they know everything about wine, they're wrong. Do not trust what
Not
they're
possible.
saying. You can't. But I wanted to highlight that because I think that the fact that you've tasted like 90% of the wines in your shop, because I think that's one of the major benefits of visiting a local wine shop over a larger box store, is that you are guaranteed, like, you can shop at any price point and you can shop for whatever you're looking for, and you can be guaranteed that it's going to be a good quality and good tasting wine. Maybe not to your taste, like that'll be something you have to work on and figure that out. But quality wise, you can trust that because you've tasted all of them. Like, you're not going to have a wine in your store that you don't think is good quality and that people would like.
Exactly. Why would I waste money on something? But it's my money. I don't want to buy stuff
Yeah.
that's terrible. Before, when I was doing buying for somebody else's money, it was a little bit less daunting, but now it's very serious. It's like, if I'm going to buy it, I need to sell it for a profit. It's a really important decision that I'm making there. So, and you're right, not everybody's going to like everything. That would be a strange wine drinker. I don't like everything, but there's a
But it's
lot of
at
things.
least, yeah, it's good like it's good quality.
Yeah, I do think that one of my strengths is I maybe don't like every kind of wine, but I do understand what the profile of that wine should be. I understand why it's important to have different styles of the same varietal. And I always try to make sure there's like a traditional method or like a more modern version, and then maybe something that's a little funky, but that still at the end of the day tastes good and is the right price for the wine. So it's just, every once in a while you make a poor choice. I'm not batting 1,000 here, but I'm doing my best.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's good. Like, I always say, it's like, I think as a wine professional, we can appreciate every wine, but then accept that they're not all going to be quite to our taste. So I want to dive in a little bit. I do want to talk about kind of shopping at a wine shop, but first, I'm kind of curious to get your take on this because, in the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years, or maybe even longer, you could tell me that I feel like there's been a shift in how people view alcohol. And right, wine is in that category of alcohol, no matter how much I want to like put it on a pedestal somewhere else. Like, non-alcoholic beverages have been on the rise. Many articles claim that millennials and Gen Z, those of drinking age at least, don't drink wine. Does that worry you at all?
No, I don't think so, because wine is such a universal thing. It's been around for a very, very long time. It's not going anywhere. What it is doing is evolving with the clients. And so I think maybe what people don't see as much is that while I haven't found a non-alcoholic wine that I enjoy, but there are natural wine products, low alcohol wine products that are helping for the people that want something, but they want to know what they're putting in their body. And so I have not personally, again, I don't drink wine that's natural wine just purely because it's natural wine, but I do find the importance of having that selection for people that are really cognizant of those aspects of the winemaking process, or when they're going to put something in their body, what is it exactly that's going in there? It makes you more comfortable and at ease when you have that kind of piece that you feel in the store maybe isn't for everybody, but I want there to be something for everybody here. So I do have a lot of younger people coming and finding us and asking about the natural wine selection and wanting to know what are their options. And there are lots of wine that are lower alcohol, or there are wine alternatives, there are non-alcoholic alternatives, and we sell those too for the bar. I want to make sure that if your friends all drink a glass of wine, but you don't, I still want you to feel welcome here. And I want you to feel like there's something for you that isn't tap water. But I think it'll continue to evolve. The non-alcoholic wine movement is really big right now. They're working really hard at making something that tastes good. I do glass pour a bubble that I think is really nice for that category. And, they're going to get there.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm kind of with you. I don't drink a lot of non-alcoholic wine because to me it's just like it kind of like wine is alcohol. Like what makes wine, whenever I talk like tell people like what is wine, it is fermented grape juice. Like part of that is the fermentation process and it's hard to avoid that. But I do appreciate, I think it's always important to have options and right, some people choose not to drink and that's great. I also like that you called out like, natural wine is a great, I like the idea behind natural wine and the movement of knowing what's in the wine. But I'm sure, like you talked about, you're like, I know the stories of all these wines. I'm sure there are wines at your shop that aren't called natural, but basically follow the natural principles and have only grapes and sulfites in the wine. And you can also tell that to people as they come in, so they don't have to have only the ones that are considered or advertised as natural.
I would say, at least 60 to 70% of our international wines in here are going to fall in that category to some degree of low intervention.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious, the last question on this one. Is there anything that you're doing at the Grape Choice to kind of reach the younger generation? I know you're very active on social media. That's how I kind of started. I think I visited the wine shop, but I also just follow along on there because I love all the stuff that's being posted. Was this an effort to kind of reach a younger demographic, or are there other things that you're doing to kind of, reach those folks?
I'll say, I don't think I'm doing anything really purposeful. I think I'm doing something that any business owner should do, which is just expanding my marketplace. And that is by creating a space that people like to be in. And so, I compare this place to like going to your grandma's house because it's very homey and comfortable and mismatched furniture. And, it's a chill vibe. What I found was that before COVID, we really were degrading. A lot of our customer base was older. We were losing customers to retirement, moving away, or other sad situations. And so our regular base was kind of getting smaller, and some people were finding us, but not a lot. And during the pandemic, when people were so interested in learning about alcohol because we're now consuming so much more of it, we created a safe space for people to come and be. We had heaters and tents outside, and I really followed the rules, and I was very cognizant about making everybody safe. I was a police officer at times and I didn't want to be. And because I created a home outside of your home during a time where it was so important, young people found us. And so when the pandemic started to kind of resolve, it was time for social media. I really needed to continue what we had begun during that, because I saw now that everything's open, they can go wherever they want. What are they going to keep them coming in? I've got a lot of COVID babies in here. We're very family friendly. Our wine club membership has gone really high into like a younger crowd. And so I think have a place where everyone is welcome. And, your kids are welcome. I raised my children here. I was 29 when I started here. So I think because I'm kind of just middle-aged, I can kind of see both pieces. I see and have friends in their 70s and 80s, and I have friends in their 20s and 30s. And I don't think there's anything better than being able to go somewhere and be yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's so perfect. I think and that's one of the things I love about wine is I think it can connect people from all different walks of life. And like you said, you just made a space that people feel comfortable. I think any business and any, you're going to get into any hobby or any, I was talking today, the gym that I go to, I love going to in the mornings because I feel comfortable. I am not a gym rat by any means. I am not, I haven't, I'll take a long break and then go back, but I know I'm always welcome there and they're always excited to see me. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've created at the Grape Choice of just whenever people show up, they know they're going to see somebody they know, or they know the people working and they're going to be, oh, hey, how's it going? Like just that feeling of feeling welcome, I think is so important and probably has really helped with your business. And then transporting that to social media was genius. I think that's done a lot to give recognition and for people to think of you.
Yeah, I mean, we've never spent money on any marketing in the past because the word of mouth was really strong. But, a place that's been around for 40 years can become stagnant in a way. And so, by livening it up, making changes here and there, just adding the food was a really important component. The charcuterie boards were a dream of mine to come into fruition and see that become such a huge piece of why people come here. And it's such a, I just keep saying like my personal model is just to like lean into the current trend, try to be ahead of it if you can. It was a part of what made us successful in COVID is they preemptively kind of started doing things that hoping that I was guessing that the future looked a certain way. And so when I saw that, you've got food keeps people here instead of, them taking one glass and then getting hungry and wanting to go somewhere else. Nobody else around here really does like a really cool charcuterie program. I mean, we think we have probably 15 different choices of things you can choose from. So again, something for everybody, vegans to carnivores. So I really enjoy implementing new things and seeing how people react to them. And, and if they like it, great. If they don't, move on. It's okay.
Right? You're like, yeah, we tried it. It was worth a try.
Yeah.
I love it. Wow. Crazy to believe that Desirae knew like within the first year or two that she was working there that like she was meant to own this wine bar. I absolutely love that. I mean, I always think about like, I'm like, do I believe in manifestation or do I not? What do I think? I mean, this has to be like proof for that, right? Like she just knew it was going to happen and she made it happen. So be sure to tune in next week when Desirae gives us her top tips for shopping at a small wine shop, all from the inside. And she lets us know why you will find some lower cost bottles at her wine shop, but why it might be worth it to spend a couple extra dollars shopping at a small wine shop versus shopping somewhere like a Costco or QFC. And just to give you a little preview of what to expect next week, here is a little snippet of the second half of our interview. So one of the things I hear a lot is that many folks think that wine is more expensive at a small wine shop. Is that true? Could somebody find, if they're on a budget, could they find a good bottle of wine at a small wine shop?
If a small wine shop is doing their job right, yes, absolutely. I think if you're not, like, again, catering to the masses and if you're excluding people because of your own tastes or your own notions about what a wine store should be, then you're going to be limiting yourself.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you loved it as much as I did, I would so appreciate it if you could take a quick second, rate it, and leave a review, and of course, share it with all of your wine-loving friends. Thanks again for listening, and if you want to learn more about wine, be sure to come follow me at Cork and Fizz on Instagram. And if you're interested in exploring new wines and joining an incredible community of wine lovers, be sure to sign up for my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. Remember, you can get a free pass if you've never joined us before. Just head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass. This will get you a free pass so you can choose an upcoming Cork Crew event to join for free. Did I mention it's free? Okay, all right. Cheers.